We acknowledge the Ancient Ones, the Greater Shamanic Council of Light, Hermes, both Trismegistus and Seshet, Lady of the Measuring Cord, as above, so below, as within, so without. We acknowledge Imhotep, architect of the cosmos. May the earth be the mirror of heaven. We acknowledge the sacred order of the Magi, and all throughout history who knew, like now, a turning of the ages. We acknowledge the master builders of Göbekli Tepe and the great shining ones at Kalash. The courage and knowledge of the Polynesian wayfinders traversing the great oceans. We acknowledge the prophetic traditions of Ezekiel and Daniel, the traditions of Avalon, the Merlin, and the Round Table, the calendric wizardry of the Maya, and the Venus teachings from Mesoamerica, the Jupiter teachings originating in China, and the Vedic lunar mansion traditions, the Babylonian and Sumerian sidereal zodiacs, the brilliant Hellenistic invention of the seasonal zodiac. The Neolithic peoples around the planet, some still today, honoring the sacred connection between the land and the sky. The Tuatha De Danann in Ireland, who created a time of 2,000 years of peace, the builders of Newgrange. My teachers that are not in human form, Mount Shasta, the Grandfather Rock at the Wonderland of Rocks in Joshua Tree, Mount Haleakala on Maui, the Fish Lake Valley, Hierophany, and the sacred landscapes around the planet, the astrosophy of Rudolf Steiner, and the esoteric astrology of DK in the Tibetan, both presaging the shamanic astrology paradigm, and particularly the archetypal visions of C.G. Jung and the cosmology of my mentor, Dane Rajar. For these and more, we give thanks.
Hi, everybody. Here we are again in another month of our monthly vlogcasts that we try to do around the time of the full moon. And I'm here today again to explore the mystery schools with our president, Mary Kern. And I'm delighted to also have with us today my wife, Lynn. And they'll both be a dialogue with me as we go through the Cancer Mystery School. And this is the last of 12. So we will have gone through all of them over this past year. And the purpose of this exploration is to imagine here at the turning of the ages how it would have been for the Merlin, or how it would have been for the different people at the turning of ages, what they would be faced with, which was to be simultaneously aware of what was great about what happened before, what is coming in from the future to now, and then honestly dealing with what the reality is at the present time, so it's like taking into account all three. And then with that as our inspiration, then we're going to be looking into the essence of this mystery school. Forever. There is a certain going to be essential qualities of Cancer throughout history. And then once we've established that as a foundation, then we will explore, most importantly, the different content over the different time periods in history. And that will include a visionary exercise to imagine how we can see it in the future, how we can evolve this mystery school into the next ages, the upcoming ages. So again, the emphasis is on being able to sense into and to actually explore also, philosophically and historically, that Cancer as an essence, as a mystery school, remember, we're not talking about sun signs now, but as the mystery school Cancer, that it does have an essence and it does have a variety of different possible contents. And I think this is one of the ones that certainly it's worth having only our attention on this one because it's such an important one in the continuity of a culture, you know, throughout the ages. And so a good starting point here would be to look at where it fits in with the other mystery schools. You know, and in our school, we will separate the 12 into primarily two categories. And the first one I want to discuss is the modality, which is the division of the 12 into 3 groups. And in many forms of astrology, this would be called the cardinal signs. And we've already gone through Aries and Libra and Capricorn. And now we have the 4th of them. And in our language in the school, we would call this the householder modality. And actually, we have another phrase, which is culture bearer. And that was actually something that Lynne brought to my attention because she said, a lot of people don't know what in the world it means, householder, you know. So the culture bearer part of it is, I think, important to put in there too, because these are the 4 that form the foundation of how culture will have a continuity from past, present to future. You know, they're the ones that have to do with family, the ones with mothering, with parenting, with family structure, with how that goes from one generation to the next. And very, very different than the in service to spirit ones, which we've already talked about all of them, and the ones that are associated with self-interest. And I thought it was particularly interesting. I'll also mention now that we are in the final half day of the season of Cancer. You know, I mean, right now the sun is about 29.5 Cancer and Mercury is in Cancer. So we are still in the Cancer season. So I thought it would be good that this would be the last one we explore. In the future, these monthly Vlogcasts will be on plenty of other subjects, but now we've gone through the different mystery schools. And I also thought it was interesting that to have Mary here to dialogue about this, because of course she is a family householder. She had you have how many children? Remind us.
3 children.
Well, Lynne has a big family, you know, 4 brothers and 4 half brothers, right? You know, so and she's the only female in that whole brood, you know, so, and she's well aware of how family structure works over here. So I think this will be a most useful dialogue after we establish the rest of this foundation. So we put it in the modality of householder culture bearer, but we also see it through its element, water. And of the 3 water mystery schools, this way more resembles Pisces than it does Scorpio. Scorpio being a self-interest one, and it's about your own feelings, your own emotions, your own internal states of the feeling function. Water is feeling function. While Cancer and Pisces are giver expressions of the feeling function. It might be useful to describe the fundamental difference between the Cancerian version and the Piscean version. The Cancerian version is personal, but it's a hierarchical personal, vertical personal. So it's how to have responsible, loving nourishment over a period of time to parent and child, student and teacher, therapist and client. And I'm looking at that as vertical. That's, for example, different than Libra, or Libra Aries, which is horizontal. So it applies to authentic hierarchy, that role, that relationship that a parent or a teacher has to their children or their students and so on. Pisces, on the other hand, is transpersonal. It applies to everything, all all life, and all people. It's not designated just to your own kids or your own clan or your own family. Maybe one other distinction that it would be useful to discuss here would be the distinction between Cancer and Virgo. And the reason for that is because associated very strongly with Cancer are lots of concepts around mothering, providing nourishment. And on the wheel of life, among all the mystery schools, Virgo and Cancer have a strong connection to everything we might think of about mother. But Cancer is personal mother. My parents, my clan, my tribe, my country, and so on. While Virgo is Earth Mother herself. It's Gaia herself, and it's not personal. But they both are mother concepts. And, like over the years, I've noticed that women who have lots of Virgo and Cancer, they got it all. It's all like mother stuff, big time. Also, I'll make a distinction here that many people are family householders, for whatever reason, cultural or family lineage or whatever, men or women have families. They may at a certain point in their life be a parent or have children. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're identified very strongly with these archetypes, so that's the very important, thing to remember here. I think that, maybe this would be a good time to give our shortest definition in the school of Cancer. And that has to do with, we can say it's the essence of the mystery school. How to provide nourishment in a responsible and long enough way for the seed to grow to its maturity. And so that could apply to a parent and a child, could apply to a teacher and a student, therapist and a client. So therefore, built into that is to have an awareness of when enough is enough, like when the maturity actually takes place. And as we'll see as we continue this discussion, how the different content has changed in different time periods, and even today in different parts of the world, and in different phases of life, right? And so that's an important part of our conversation. Any thoughts from you two so far on what I've been introducing?
I would just say that that I think everybody relates to Cancer, whether they have it or not, because we've all either had a mother or been a mother. And we know the deep comfort that comes from being nurtured. And so I would just say, tune in to those kinds of feelings as we talk about this, and know that that is part of the essence of Cancer that's always been around, even though, different cultures has given it different responsibilities and different limitations. And I know that's what you want to talk a little bit about now.
Oh my gosh, yes. And the flavor of that, the essence of that is probably, of all the different expressions of the feminine principle, it's the one most recognized by most everybody. That's the first thing people think of. Right.
Oh, especially in the Philippines. Boy, when Diane and I got married, we were like pressured for many years, like, where are your kids? Where are your half breeds and all that? And like, when I tell them we're not sure, so the people here like, what? And it's like a blank, wheels not turning. What did she say? Then they can't hear it. They ask you again.
It's like it is like the first question. In fact, I can. It's a novelty if I meet somebody here and they don't ask that first. I even had an experience when I was in Ireland, and it happened to be a taxi driver who was from the Philippines, and we were talking about where I was. I said, I'm actually here visiting from the Philippines. oh, how many kids do you have?
And so many
Yeah.
people were asking us and pressuring us that I actually considered saying, oh, we tried, but I can't have kids, you know, because they were making me feel guilty, selfish and all that. But like, it's just funny. Anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's really hard to do shamanic astrology in the Philippines unless you have the overarching archetype for the whole thing being Cancer.
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting indeed.
Oh, talking about the hierarchy, you were mentioning. The thing is here, when Daniel first came to the Philippines, you know, there's a hierarchy. There's the elders, the older people, and the younger. And everyone was carrying things for Daniel. Like, oh, give me your grocery bag. I'll carry this for you. And Daniel's like, what are you doing? I can do it on my own. And the younger guys were like, well, how come he doesn't want? We're carrying the things for the elders. And I had to explain to him that that's how it is here.
Yeah,
So
right.
yeah.
They don't do it anymore.
Yeah, they learn.
And sometimes I wish they would, right? No, we'll show him, right? Very full word. Yeah, so maybe I want to actually jump into this now regarding, now that we got a sense of the essence. One of my greater interests is to look into ancient history. And I have a particular interest in the gatherer-hunter cultures, the Aboriginal cultures. I've recently become quite a fan of the works of a writer called Robert Lowler, who writes in great detail about what he discovered in Tasmania, in Australia, among the Tamil people in southern India. His views I thought they just really put it together a lot for me about how it used to be. So that in those cultures, I mean, we're talking about way before 5,500 years ago, and still existing until recent times in certain parts of the world, that the way the culture was set up is that a child, after their birth, for the first 6-7 years, were like joined at the hip with the mother. There was no separation between the child and the mother. It was such unbelievable nurturing. But then there was a rite of passage that happened at around age 6 or 7, where the child was absolutely separated from the mother, which was an initiation challenging, certainly for the child, but you can imagine how difficult that would be for the mother. And then what would happen at that point is the child would discover that all the women, all the families in their clan were their parents. And it's quite interesting. And I mean, I really, I think that's a rite of passage that we don't have, very seldom have, all right? And it was probably very good for them in that sense. And I think those rites of passage were a main feature of these original cultures. And then at 14 or 15, then there would be other rites of passage, where the boy would become a man by doing his walkabout, or the girl would be separated from the other boys at that point, because the boys and the girls were exploring and experimenting and playing together. Apparently, according to Robert and his understanding of the Aboriginal culture, one of the biggest games the boys and girls had before their puberty was to catch their parents making love. You know, they just loved to be able to see that and oh, what are they doing? Let's sneak up on them, you know. And then beyond 14 or 15, of course, it would be different, completely different. And then they had other rites of passage when you would come into your elder, you know, and things like that. So a very different content for Cancer, as you can well see. Then I remember then in more recent times in my own family, and this was more of a feature of maybe the culture of 1955 to 1975. My parents, when I have two brothers, no sisters, and I was the oldest. And my parents' attitude at that time was, when you were 17 or 18, get him out of here. And we don't want them taking care of us when we get old. You know, I mean, it was a completely opposite kind of experience. And that was just a flavor of that particular time frame, and based on that generation. And Lynn and I have had this discussion a lot. It's not like I'm trying to be a champion of that approach, and I can also be very critical of some of the things we experience here.
Oh, here the kids stay with the parents until they get married, or until they can afford having their own house. Otherwise, the wife moves in, or whatever, or the guy moves in the wife's house.
Or individuation can be, you're in the house next door, as we've discovered.
Well,
so
not always by force. Sometimes the kids choose a house near the parents.
Right. That's right. And then that gets into something that not just in this culture, but in ever since there's been big agriculture, the agricultural civilizations, where you started needing more and more kids to work the land. And so then it's very different than in the hunter-gatherer times, when the family was kept small, because you're moving around all the time, and you didn't need 7, 8, 9, 10 kids to work the fields. So there's other reasons for the expansion of the size of families, and so that's one that's we've seen historically. Then there's other reasons. Catholicism. Where we're here, so many people are in the city, and there's still a whole bunch of people, of course, that are agricultural. But here, then the Catholic Church has a big hand in it, like 7, 8, 9, 10 kids. Well, your kids become your possession. And when you have individuals that maybe are poor, what is their wealth? In their children, right? And then the children are there. Well, they appear where the kids go overseas, and what do?
Oh, it's common. Actually, it's not just the Philippines. It's the Thais, the Indians. When I worked abroad, the more Asian countries, you work abroad and send money to your relatives, to your family every month.
Mm-hmm. And it even happens among the poor here. They're making money to support their parents or their family, right? So the content here is a lot different, than it would be in the Aboriginal cultures, and certainly different than in 1955 to 1975 America. The different content. Now, what I've noticed is that in places of the so-called advanced world, so-called, like US, Europe, and so on, Australia, New Zealand, and so on, that how this operates is really strongly by archetype. So I've had plenty of clients that are primarily cancer types, and they basically behave more like the way we described
Filipinos.
Yeah. So and at its worst, the shadow side of that is parents believe they own their children, and it becomes extremely difficult to individuate, and that's something I want to talk about as we go through it's the shadow, really, of cancer.
I think it's also when the parent makes the kids the extension of what they weren't able to achieve or what they wanted to do. So the kids have to, it's an extension.
Right. And part of that, though, is that they're there for us. The kids are there for us.
It's both ways. The parents are, it's a codependency.
It is. It's the hierarchical or the vertical codependency, which can show up actually not just in family structure, but in some of the other applications. Teacher and student, therapist and client, where you don't want to lose your job. It's like the teacher that needs the students more than the students need the teacher. The therapist who's so identified with their problem clients that they will not allow them to actually graduate. Those factors also go into the shadow of cancer. When to know when the maturity has been reached. Mary, in our school, in the timeline material, there are those very specific Saturn cycles, which are about the timings to do the individuation, to move it to another level. I can tell a personal story. In my own case, despite my parents' attitude, get them out of here, my mother still wanted to control what I did. And she was, I would sometimes bring a girlfriend home, and, I would try to introduce the girl or the young woman to my mom and that kind of thing. And it's like there was never any approval of any of it. It was such a interference, really. And I actually, at that point, and I'm not saying you all need to do this, but what I had to do at that point, I actually ended up telling my mother, I don't want to have anything more to do with you. I just drew the line in the sand. And while a year and a half later, I wasn't employing that, but I don't know if she ever got over it. I understood why I had to do that. And it was a really important thing for me to do that, to take that stance of individuation. Of course, I'm a Saturn-Venus person, and so that was one of the things I had to do for myself. The most extreme version of this is found in a saying of Jesus, in the Christian Bible, where at a certain point he tells the disciples, your parents are not your parents, your family is not your family. And now that can actually be over literalized. I'm all. That's not what was meant by that. It's just time to shift the level to something different. That you change hierarchies, a change of hierarchy. And some people need to do it more dramatically or drastically than others. Boy, have I had experiences along those lines with your mother.
Well, at least in the West, there's still the choice. Here, it's a given. Before you marry someone, you have to introduce to the parents. Otherwise, it's like no respect. So I had to do that with him and my dad. Yeah.
They had a hard time with that one at first. Not your mother, but your dad. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the expectation that, of course, that once you're married, then the mother goes along with it. They're part of the household, that kind of thing.
Well, it's a good thing you were older than the mother-in-law.
Right. Those are
the hierarchy worked in a good sense.
Yeah, you taught me a great song about that, right? My mother is my mother.
Oh, right.
I don't know if you can remember how
I'm
to do
my
it.
own grandpa.
Yes, right. It's a whole chain of things where you go through these connections and then you find out that the end.
Yeah.
Do you know how to sing? No.
It's long. If there's time later.
Okay. Yes, it all depends on your family of origin. It depends on the expectations of the culture, but I see it more like archetypes. So I often, among members of these so-called advanced cultures, somebody could legitimately have a phase of life where they have kids. And of course they do that in a good way, but their primary archetypes may not be to be a mother or to be a father. Or you can have plenty of men who maybe are trained to be warriors or to be, something other than a parent, but they find themselves in that role. And there are plenty of men that really their legitimate thing is to be more nurturing than the woman they married. So there's a variety of different possibilities there, and just as in all of our explorations about within this paradigm, it's the archetype itself and a full understanding of the essence of the mystery school is actually more important than other than aspects or any of the rest of it. It's archetype driven if you really get what the essence of that particular mystery school is. Right. Why don't we at this point, Mary, let's illustrate it with some of the images, and maybe that will spark some more interesting dialogue here.
I can do that. Hang on one second. And it's gone again.
You know, kind of like one of the things I meant there is that many people who do not have kids, even if there is cultural pressure on it, maybe your life purpose does not include that. And to be able to say that very clearly and to know that that's okay. You know, a woman's identity need not only be that she's a mother, or that a man, that he must be a father, you know, because we have a wide range of different possibilities. And it's also natural to find yourself in a situation with family, and then how you orient yourself toward it. Some people, when their kids become 18 or 19 or 20, they're, oh man, they can't wait to have empty nest. And then others, it's like, I don't know what to do, you know, I mean, if they're gone, who am I, you know? And then you have the really most extreme example of the shadow of Cancer, the 80-year-old mother saying, always talking about her 60-year-old baby.
We are up. That was difficult. I apologize. Okay.
No, that's all right.
Okay.
We're keeping the dialogue going here. So
Right.
this was actually the title of our presentation today, Cancer, the Mystery School, God and Goddess. But one of the interesting ways to get a texture and a feel for it are from the shamanic astrology divination card deck. And in the card deck, there are actually 3 different cards for Cancer: the mystery school, the God, and the goddess. And the one you have up here first is the goddesses. And so this was our artist, Roy Purcell, who created an image for the Cancer goddess, right? And this is just one different version. You can have many, many different images for it. But the goddess Cancer is the one who provides a variety of different nourishments for her family and for her clan and for her community. This card actually even has some of the flavor of Virgo in it. You know, the way of providing you know, food and nourishment for her family.
Let's see.
And then here we have the gods, and here we have the happy family with the nurturing father, you know, who's loving the wife, and again, there's the happy kids, you know, and one of the ways that this actually blends with something like our understanding of Leo is that the ideal here really is that the kids are feeling safe to fully be kids, you know, so they have the nourishment, they feel safe, they're not controlled, they're not over smothered, and they're not forced to be you know, something that's not just their own spontaneous creative selves, you know, when they're kids. And I love the way this card captures that imagery. The happy family with the loving, nurturing dad and the happy mom, and the kids are just, wow, they're just having fun being kids.
I want to add something. I want to add that my partner has Cancer, and he doesn't have a family. He didn't have children, but he does nourish me, and he is a landscape designer. He nourishes tons of plants.
Yes.
The animals in this house are like magnetized to his lap the minute he comes home, and the cat waits at the curb for his car to drive up at the end of the day. So as a nurturer, he just effervesces with that very nurturing energy. that is picked up in so many ways, even though he doesn't have children. So I just want to point that out because it's
Right.
not always about the family and the children, but
Right.
definitely nurturing.
Yeah, one thing I want to add here is that in the early years of the school and of the development of the paradigm, I was specializing a lot in the non-traditional expressions of the masculine and the feminine, because you know, the ones that were not actually oriented toward the culture bearer stuff, you know, so that's what I put a lot of focus on. And I tended to, some said this to me, devalue the culture bearer ones like Cancer, right? And over the years, I've come to recognize that even within the framework of hierarchical patriarchy, you know, and the structure that we've been born into in most of the world, that there can be a person, a male, for example, who is a parent and is doing a great Cancer thing with a great deal of nobility, with a great deal of heart. It's not necessarily our caricature, which I sometimes call, I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody by saying this, but the quote Mormon husband, right? Who is the captain of industry, who is making large amounts of money, who has 7 or 8 kids and is considered a good dad, but hasn't been seen to talk to the wife in 5 years, you know? So it's like a completely role-oriented thing within the framework of patriarchy. But I'm actually talking about like your example there, where the individual has a great sense of nobility of and heartful purpose within Cancer. And many men do that, and they happen to have married women who are Amazons, or women who are priestesses, or women who are free spirit eccentrics, right? And so he then becomes the house husband, as it were, you know, and is actually doing that in a brilliant and beautiful way, you know. So there can be nobility. Just same thing with Aries and Libra and Capricorn. So it's important to actually say that we're not like denigrating the the way in which some men and women will play out the role that has been assigned to them actually by the nature of the time we're in, but they do it with a great deal of heart and nobility and goodness, you know. So that's important to recognize.
Yeah, for me, personally, or here in the Philippines, I've been helped by a lot of Cancer type men. You know, the clown who made all of us kids laugh, the chef who gave us good food, you know, men, and who didn't necessarily have kids, or the teacher, no kids, but he treated the students like they were his own.
Right.
I think Cancer is so beautiful in its ability to recognize vulnerability and step in and protect and step in and make safe space for. I think that's still another really big characteristic. I mean, all of us were vulnerable as newborns, and without that Cancer energy, we probably would have had a lot less chance of surviving. So I think it's really important to the culture in all the ways that it expresses. And even as adults, we fall into periods in our life where we become vulnerable, and it's often the Cancer that will step in and hold us up and help us regain.
Right. There's another interesting element here that I've noticed in my work with clients, that in some families, parents who are really not either archetypally or by lineage prepared to be parents can actually be gifted with a Cancer moon, boy or girl. And actually that's a situation where actually the child knows more about providing nourishment than the parents. and so then actually the child is resonating with the uncertainty of the parent and wants to help them. I mean, that can happen with Cancer, with Capricorn moon also. You know, that happened for me too, but with the Capricorn moon. But this is very often you're gifted with a child. But then the problem that can happen there is if they don't individuate. So basically they become so hooked into being the provider, that the one who takes care of the parents, that actually they end up maybe in later years, it falls to them to actually then be the provider and the support for their parents, when actually it might be time for them to move on to something else. That's a Cancer moon kind of thing, right? Cancer rising would be a little bit different, where it may actually truly be your life purpose theme to take care of your ailing parents or a sibling. Here we have the mystery school itself. Nourishment from home and community, and could say to home and community. So it's the way to have healthy, really nourishing family structure, clan structure, cultural, having the culture work. And even the people that are applying Cancer to their business or to their organization, it's to have it operate like a healthy family, where there's a feeling of caring and nourishment, even if you're the one running it, that they feel like they're in a healthy family. There's the right use of hierarchy there. That's different than a dictatorial leader, So this is someone who really cares about those that are working for them or working with them.
I would add to that, having had the experience of working in a corporation that was fairly small, but was very nurturing, people didn't leave. People didn't want to leave because they felt that community, right, and they felt that nurturing. And then comparing that to working for a corporation that was based on military structure, where there were just boundaries everywhere and rules everywhere. And my creativity suffered hugely, I think. Right. One is very right-brained, the other's very left-brained. And of course, Cancer as a water sign is right-brained. So yeah, that's how the energy.
I mean, a wonderful Cancerian manager is going to be able to tune in to the unique gifts of the people that are working for them, and to be able to nurture that, so it's a rare thing to find, particularly in the way that corporate structure has tended to move in more recent times, which tends to be more the shadow of Capricorn. But boy, those two can really cooperate with each other. Yeah. The Cancer challenges, right? Giving unwanted advice, tries to take care of everyone. Family relationships often determine their self-identity. Insular, limited by cultural identity. Smother mothers, control their children and others. Lacking self-care, giving to get. These are the key words that come from our handbook and from our courses. And so you all have that as a reference when you watch this. Since this is good here, Cancer has compassionate ability to initiate activities that serve a greater purpose for family and community. Yeah, so that's all good stuff. We could actually move this. I'm wondering if there's anything else about content. I think we've established the different time periods in history, with matrilineal, patrilineal, hunter-gatherer, agricultural, the herdsmen, the different ways of life, the city dwellers, and so on, will have different content for how to make Cancer work from one generation to the next. That is one of the ingredients of the culture bearer signs in that modality, which is that it's concerned about the perpetuity, the connection between what was before, now, and going into the future. Cancer and Capricorn share this. If you look at it from an idealistic perspective, it's like the Native Americans would say, we make no decision save for the benefit of the generations to follow. And we do honor the traditions and what was good from the past. And so this actually brings up a word that is usually and often given to Cancer, which is sentimental, or nostalgic and, things like that. But there's a difference between sentiment and sentimental. So if you're sentimental, you can be captured by what happened before, as if it was some golden age that never really existed, then, and sometimes the conservative approach, fundamentalist approach, is idealizing, oh, it was perfect in 1955, we could only have that again. Completely, losing track that there was massive shadow that was existing at that point. Not recognizing that. But what are you laughing at?
I just remembered, since you were talking about sentimental, Philippines is like a cancer country. And a few years ago, we were renting a house and they were singing all 1980s songs because they were so attached to those songs. We had to hear them every day.
Yeah, I always say they're lost in the 80s and the 50s. So it's always the same songs they do in karaoke here. Obviously.
And the thing we call precious junk, I noticed with the cancer types of people, they can't throw things. So, oh, that's my old vase. Oh, that's my old picture. So the house is so full of old stuff. That's the shadow, but both shadow and good, but it's just funny.
Right.
Precious junk.
But so it's the difference between sentimental and sentiment. I mean, sentiment is actually valuing the heartful experiences we've had in our life, and that's a really beautiful thing. So, like, to go back to those essential, loving, and incredible heart-opening experiences we've had in the past can actually open our hearts now. That's very different than simply being lost in the past. So I just want to make that distinction. Because my brother Tom had taught me about that. Right? So,
I would just add too that another beautiful thing about cancer is they surrender themselves in order to give to the needs of others. And in doing that, it actually creates a tremendous amount of joy and love that they receive in return. So there's this really beautiful cycle that happens. They're not giving to get, they're giving because it actually gives them energy. And then I think the other thing maybe important is the 2 phases of the cancer training, because like the other water signs, cancer they have to first really feel that full range of feelings in order, to really express themselves fully and to be really empathetic. And then the second part is that really serious, responsible commitment to giving love and sustenance to children or projects or seeds, again, until maturity. And it really involves safety, guidance, protection, nourishment, and affirmation. These are kind of those responsibilities that help build the lives of others.
And yeah, and I'll just add on to that, which is that it's within the water feeling function element that basic, loving, empathic, compassionate, mammalian empathy happens. I mean, it is possible for a person to have empathy, and they get to that with their mind or their consciousness, but the actual organic expression of empathy is in the feeling function. And it's one of the reasons why I'm very suspicious of merging with AI, and having it all be just digital brains, but rather the heart and the empathy that allows us to be a good Samaritan, allows us to care about animals that are dying, and as well as the suffering of our kids. This is a pretty good point to maybe look at visioning what it could be, as we dream it further. One of my heroes in the 70s, actually, I had the opportunity to hear him speak at our university, and I think it was in 1968, 69, and that was Buckminster Fuller, who was a triple cancer, moon, sun, rising, like everything cancer. And he was, of course, in the Pluto and Cancer generation. And he felt that we could make a world that works for everyone, and was able to figure it out technologically how that could happen. There is not a problem with overpopulation. It's basically the lack of will in our political leaders and our elites to actually make it work for everyone. He actually designed systems for how that could happen. And he actually, on a more dour note, by the end of his life, thought that we had failed as a culture, that we'd failed our final examination, that therefore we were not looking out for the entire planet as global family. That, and this is a principle we use in the school a lot, which is that we start first, we're all humans. And so it's not about bifurcation into men versus women or blacks versus whites or whatever it might be, but we're all humans first. What I think this applies to the idea of global family. If we are completely dedicated and committed to our kids, even if one of them is in jail for 10 years, we still love them no matter what they do. Why shouldn't that apply to children and everywhere? Why? That's the clannish shadow of cancer. My country, right or wrong, we're number one, stuff like that. And other places are inferior to us because they're not our clan, they're not our race, they're not our country, and so on. So the need to globalize the essence of cancer, I think, is a super important thing for us to put our attention on, and to vision, and to imagine. Imagine. Yeah.
We are one big family. I think there's also a Christian idea that when a man marries, he joins pretty much the woman's family, and his own siblings are not considered, of course, as important as his children. And I've actually seen that create some pretty big rifts, because siblings that are really close together can feel real disoriented and displaced by that.
Right.
Yeah. So the idea that really holding everyone as your family. And then, of course, there's all those people that don't have family. So they can choose their family, or the people whose families are so dysfunctional, they can't operate in them. Again, we can all choose our family, and we can all be nurtured by.
That's actually the factor that happens at a point of individuation. Where that is kind of what Jesus meant. Your family is not your family. But I'm going to extend that a little bit more to, particularly to cancer risings, because there's so many cancer risings that, particularly if they no longer have their own kids, but especially if they don't have any, it's, where are my people? Where is my true family? Where are the people who we could build a healthy community, or a healthy company, or a healthy family together, with the best principles of cancer, whether they're your blood family or not. This is a whole expansion of the idea of the essence of cancer. And that's why I think that the future orientation on understanding cancer, it's beyond bloodline. I mean, we can honor what the best we got from our bloodline, but still, it's like we need to move forward, And so this brings to mind something that I've noticed the most with Cancer Moon and Capricorn Moon. At the turning of the ages, if a person logically and rationally, or based upon what their parents thought or what the lineage thought, it fell upon them to keep it going the same way, then it looks to me like the biblical thing, the sins of the father are delivered upon the future generations. So the idea at this time, if you have the moon there, get out from underneath it. It isn't your job anymore. You break that chain. And so you put your attention on finding commitment to building a new way of doing healthy cancer, and Capricorn also. But of course, Cancer and Capricorn have a resonant polarity, And I mean, in dualistic old time astrology, they would say Mother was Cancer and father was Capricorn. However, I've seen at this time period, just from some of the stuff we've talked about already, that it could actually be the father who's more Cancerian. You know, the mother could be more Capricornian. It was actually Liz Green back in the 70s who first said this, that it's just wrong to apply the role in patriarchy of father to Capricorn and Cancer to the mother. But they both have a resonant polarity with each other.
Oh, I'd like to add also that one quote good thing about this past year, we know what's happening in the world, is that you can use it to help you really identify who is your clan, who is your family, where do you belong, you know, other than what you were given
Right.
at birth.
Yeah, and this is what, of course, a lot of people, I would say there's probably very few exceptions that are not finding this in their own families. We certainly hear like one whole other side of her family chosen one way, and this side of the family is chosen a different way. I mean, I think what we are most grateful for is the fact that we're on the same page. You know, it's like we have the same views about what is happening, you know, globally at this point. And I have a great deal of compassion for those that are not having that experience. I mean, to have friends, to have a partner, to have family members that are on the same page, so helpful right now. You know, to know who our allies are. Yeah.
I think keeping that strength of family right now is critical, because we are in such uncertain times that if there can be trust and love there, that is it's kind of like a safety net. And I feel that with my own family, that it's extra important to be extra careful and loving within your own family. And it seems like the families have disintegrated more with the commercialization and with what the bottom of the Kali Yuga has challenged Cancer with, in terms of being super mom, being spread too thin, not giving to oneself, becoming depleted. So it really, the questions I think for the turning of the age come back to, well, what is a healthy giver? And giving to the self first is important. And what are healthy qualities and virtues of love and nurturing that can support the ability for children to thrive? And this, again, we've gone to so much online learning, and where is the nurturing there? And how do we make sure that children feel nurtured when they're being given a lot of left brain training? And how do you make healthy decisions for the future and the present generations? Because we have that with the resources being polluted and diminished. How do we make that happen? That's part of good cancer too, I would say. So progressive cancer, and by that, I guess I would mean if it's your rising sign, your midheaven, your Jupiter,
Venus,
your
Mars,
Mercury. Yeah, those are all things that are pertinent to you if that's on your natal chart.
I think what you're bringing out here is the importantness. This is like what we were saying before about the feeling function, the mammalian heart, is that even though it's vertical, parent to child, teacher to student, it's personal. It's actually a human being to a human being. You know, there's actually an organic humanness in the connection. You know, and I will envision it that way. I mean, as if we go into if the Great Awakening moves in that direction, it includes that, you know, to be able to be with each other, to hug, to share, to heart to heart, you know, breath to breath, right?
Activate those imaginal cells, because that's what links us together. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I just like to add about the topic security. You know, the cancer types make others secure, feel nurtured and secure. But I also noticed that sometimes they make others feel safe because they have the need, the cancer person themselves, they have the need to feel safe. So to ensure their safety, they make others feel safe so that there's the lock, like in a sense, a trap. So I always come up with this this philosophical question, like here in the Philippines, we don't have insurance, we don't have home for the aged. So it's a given that when you're old, you will be taken care of by the younger ones. it's a given. It's a shame if you don't take care of the older
Right,
people.
right.
So, you know, it's really are you giving to get, or are you giving because that's your archetype? I'm just sharing what any person with cancer.
Yeah, that's another factor here, is that they don't have the situation in the so-called advanced cultures of old folks homes. You know,
Yeah.
there's not people don't go off into those communities and to die without connection. You know, so that's an unknown concept here.
Oh yeah, that's unknown.
Mm-mm-mm.
It's both quote good and bad quote, because yeah, you have the insurance that you'll be taken care of, but then again, that also kind of ensures the
Yeah.
codependency.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the point. That's the version of the codependency that we're talking about here. Like in a relationship, we have cancer in there. It's very common in the among the clients I have, is that it's like there's two kinds of codependency. So the vertical codependency is where in a relationship, you either need to take care of someone or to need someone to take care of you. And there is a way through this. And this is a little bit, I mean, other than the inner sacred marriage work, which of course is very important with this. And that is, there seems to be an energetic principle. And whenever a person is stuck where they find themselves giving and giving and giving and not being rewarded, or giving to get, and so on, or being exhausted or tired, or, you know, and so on, there seems to be this energetic principle that if you are legitimately giving in a circumstance where that is in fact your actual role as a parent to a child, as, you know, or teacher to a student, whatever, that there's an equal energetic exchange, that by giving you are in fact nurtured by the love that comes back, you see. And the way for you to tell if you're over giving, or that maybe you're off track and need to change to something else, is that if you're giving and giving and giving and you're exhausted, you're not valued, you're not validated. So that is an example. We're not talking about money. We're talking about just that feeling of being valued for what you've done. And it's tricky. And those are generally what I've noticed when people are at one of those turning points. You know, I'm tired of giving to my family. I'm tired of giving to those employees. I'm tired of giving to that man, you know, or to that woman. Well, maybe you need to change the game. It's time to notice that if you're being authentically a giver, you should be feeling an equal exchange. But that's totally different than giving to get. But I can have compassion for those who reach that point. This isn't fair. I've sacrificed my whole life for them, and look at me. You know, maybe that's exactly where you need to change the game.
Okay. We have come full circle.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just so
No, what?
Oh,
Oh,
one
go
more.
ahead. No,
One
no,
more.
we're fine.
One
Yeah.
more shadow. Sorry, I'm full of the shadow because that's what I see here. But one more shadow of Cancer I noticed, that they think they know what's best for you.
Right.
The parent knows who you should marry,
Mhm.
or let's say now in the worldwide situation, like you should take this or that medicine
Mhm.
because that's what's good for you, and they force it.
Right, right.
So, you know, it has to be like you should always read the question, what is my motive? Why do I want, quote, the good for this person? Or is it actually the good for me? You know?
And then the other side of that is that you go ahead and take it so they feel better.
Yeah.
Right. So I will only they will only feel valued if I go ahead and take their medicine. So anyway, but I want just to maybe as a close here, be willing to look in the face these different things we've discussed. Where are you on the wheel, and can you make sure to include this visioning of what cancer can be in the future. Because I'm not like an antiquarian and saying we should all be like the gatherer hunters, all right? The ones that were doing it that way. But we're at the phase of moving into a whole different way of understanding how the global family can operate. So that's what I'm hoping to leave you all with. Thank you, Mary. This is and Lynn. I really enjoyed this this dialogue with an actual mother of many, who is actually not mother archetype. Okay, me, I've never had kids, but because I have thousands of people, cancer on the midheaven. You know, where it's like I'm hoping to have healthy culture and community. You know, in our school and with my clients. And then there's you, you know.
I have my grandfather, father, and son all in one man.
So our name for each other is that she calls me the giant baby, and she's the grandmother girl. All right, so that's our private joke with each other. So anyway,
I want to end by reiterating what I said before we opened, that it's been a really honor to get to be on this call with Lynn
right,
and Daniel for the working together for the first time on a vlog. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
And
Thank you.
I just want to tell Lynn that I hope to see her doing this a lot more, because I think she's got so much.
I do too, but this is a good start. So thanks, Mary, and
Thanks, Mary.
great sharing. All right, till
Thank
till
you so
next month. And I don't know what the subject yet is going to be next month, but hope to make it entertaining at least.
It'll be good. It's always is. Thank
Bye.
you. Good night.